The stars were quiet that night. They were always quiet in the deep black, far from any sun or planet. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the bridge window of the UN Adamantine and watched the endless darkness. Her ship had been traveling for 18 months now, mapping unknown space at the edge of the galaxy. 340 crew members called this vessel home. They were explorers, scientists, and dreamers. They had left Earth to find new worlds and new wonders. They found something else instead. The alarm came without warning. Red lights filled the bridge. Officers ran to their stations. On the main screen, shapes appeared from nowhere. Ships, dozens of them, then more. Elena counted them as they dropped out of faster than light travel. 10, 20, 40, 67 warships surrounded the Adamantine like wolves around a wounded deer. Captain said. Lieutenant Chen, his voice shaking. They are hailing us. Elena straightened her uniform. She had trained for many situations. First contact with hostile aliens was one of them, but training and reality were very different things. She took a breath and nodded. Put them on screen. The alien that appeared was tall and thin. Its skin was the color of dried blood. 4 eyes sat in a face that had no nose, only slits that opened and closed as it breathed. When it spoke, the translator turned its hissing voice into cold, flat words. I am Archon K-Thra of the Velari Dominion. You have entered space that belongs to us. Your vessel is now property of the Dominion. Your species is now subject to the Dominion. You will surrender. You will submit to genetic cataloging. You will accept your place as a servitor race. This is not a request. Elena felt the eyes of her crew on her back. She felt their fear. She shared it, but she did not let it show on her face. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Navy. We are peaceful explorers. We mean no harm to you or your people. K-Thra made a sound that might have been laughter. Peaceful. Yes, they always say this. The Thesari said this. The Vaughn said this. The Kethmari said this. They are gone now, all of them. Dust in memory. You will serve us or you will join them. Those are your only choices. Elena's blood went cold. She had heard stories, rumors from deep space traders, whispers about a great empire that swallowed entire civilizations. She had hoped they were just stories. I need time, she said. I must contact my government. This decision is too important for one captain to make. Archon's 4 eyes narrowed. He studied her like a scientist studying an insect. You wish to beg your leaders for help. That will not come. You wish to cry and pray and hope for rescue. I have seen this many times. It changes nothing, but I am generous. I will give you one standard rotation. Use it to make peace with whatever gods you worship. When the time ends, you will surrender or you will burn. The screen went dark. Elena stood frozen for a long moment. Around her, the bridge was silent. Everyone was waiting for her to speak. Everyone was waiting for her to save them. She turned to face her crew. Their faces were pale. Some were crying. One young officer was praying quietly at his station. Elena walked to the center of the bridge and stood tall. Listen to me, she said. All of you, I know you are afraid. I am afraid too, but we are not going to panic. We are not going to give up. We are going to do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We are going to fight, Captain said. Commander Tosser, first officer, we are one ship against 67. We have no weapons that can match theirs. What can we do? Elena smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew. Secret, we are going to send a message to Earth and then we are going to wait. She walked to her personal terminal and entered a code that she had memorized 10 years ago, a code she had been told she would never need to use, a code that connected her directly to the highest levels of Earth's government through channels that should not exist. The message was simple: first contact with hostile Empire 67, warship surrender. Demanded, awaiting instructions. The response came in 3 minutes. 3 minutes to cross 127 light years. 3 minutes for the leaders of humanity to read her words, understand them, and make a choice that would change everything. The message was even simpler than hers. Do not surrender. Activate protocol. Prometheus, God be with you all, Elena. Read the words twice, then she laughed. It was a strange sound in the quiet bridge. Her crew looked at her like she had lost her mind. Captain Torres asked. Carefully, Elena turned to face them. Again, this time her smile was different. This time it was the smile of a hunter who had just realized she was not the prey. Do you know why this ship is called the Adamantine? She asked. No. One answered. Adamantine means unbreakable. I always thought it was just a name, a nice word to paint on the hull. I was wrong. She entered another code deep in the ship in sections that were marked as storage and cargo holds. Systems began to wake up, systems that had been sleeping since the day the ship was built. Lights flickered, the deck vibrated with new power. This ship is not an explorer, Elena said. It never was. We are one of 12 vessels scattered across the galaxy, hidden, waiting, watching. We are humanity's answer to a question that our leaders hoped would never be asked. She looked out the window at the alien fleet, 67 warships, thousands of weapons pointed at her little ship, an empire that had destroyed 800 civilizations, waiting to add humanity to the list. They think we are weak, Elena said. They think we will kneel. They think they know what humans are capable of. She turned back to her crew with fire in her eyes. They are wrong, and we are going to teach them. Outside, the Velari fleet waited. Perfect formation. Archon Kathra sat in his throne room and drank sweet wine. He was already thinking about the rewards he would receive for capturing a new species. Perhaps he would keep some of the humans as personal servants. They seemed soft and weak, but sometimes the soft ones made the best slaves. He had no idea that in the black between stars, 11 more human ships were receiving the same message. He had no idea that across the galaxy, humanity was waking up. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake of his very long life. Countdown had begun, and when it ended, the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, it was morning in Geneva. The sun was rising over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. In a building with no name, 50 of the most powerful humans alive sat around a long table. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, scientists. They had been pulled from their beds, their dinners, their lives. Now they stared at a screen showing the face of an alien that wanted to enslave their entire species. Admiral James Ayanquo stood at the head of the table. He was 70 years old, with gray hair and deep lines on his dark face. He had fought in 3 wars. He had buried 2 sons. He had helped build the most terrible weapons in human history, and he had prayed every night that he would never have to use them. 200 years ago, he said, his voice calm and steady. We intercepted a signal from deep space. It was a distress call from a species called the Sari. They were being attacked by an empire that called itself the Velari Dominion. The signal included data, records, history. We learned everything about the Dominion that day, how they had conquered 2,000 species, how they had enslaved billions, how they had erased entire civilizations from existence. He pressed a button. Images appeared on the screen, planets burning, cities destroyed, bodies piled like mountains. The room was silent. The Vasari are gone now, so are 800 other species. The Dominion does not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They find new civilizations, and they give them two choices: slavery or death. Most choose slavery. It does not matter. They all end up the same way. In the end, the Dominion uses them up and throws them away like garbage. A woman raised her hand. She was the President of the United States. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. What are you suggesting, Admiral? I am not suggesting anything, Madame President. I am telling you what we have already decided. 60 years ago, the leaders of Earth made a choice. We would not wait for the Dominion to find us. We would prepare. We built 12 ships. We scattered them across the galaxy. We gave them weapons that no civilization should ever possess. We hoped we would never need them. But he looked around the table at the faces of the most powerful people on Earth. The Dominion has found us. They have given us their terms. Now we must give them ours. Question before this council is simple. Do we kneel or do we stand? The vote took 3 minutes. It was unanimous. No human would kneel. Not today, not ever. Far across the galaxy, Captain Elena Vasquez received the council's decision. She read it twice, then called her senior officers to the conference room. They gathered around the table. Confused and afraid, she told them everything. She told them about the intercepted signal, about the Vasari and the 800 dead civilizations, about the secret program that had built their ship, about the weapons hidden in the cargo holds that they had walked past every day without knowing. When she finished, the room was silent. Commander Torres was the first to speak. You are telling us that our ship can destroy theirs, all 67 of them? No, Elena said. I am telling you that our ship can destroy their entire civilization, every planet, every station, every colony. We can burn their empire to ash and salt the ground so nothing ever grows again. Lieutenant Chin looked sick. That is not a weapon. That is a nightmare. Yes, Elena agreed. It is. Humanity has spent 200 years building nightmares. We did it because we knew that one day something like the Dominion would come. Something that does not understand mercy or reason or peace. Something that only understands one thing: power. She looked at each of them in turn. We have power. More power than they can imagine. The question is whether we are willing to use it. The officers looked at each other. Some faces showed fear. Some showed doubt. But slowly, one by one, they nodded. What do we do? Torres asked. Elena stood up. We wait for the deadline. We let them think we are scared and weak and ready to surrender. And when Archon Kathra calls to demand our answer, we give him something he has never received in his entire life. What is that? Elena's eyes were hard as stone. A warning. The hours passed. Slowly, the crew of the Adamantine prepared for battle. They checked systems they had never known existed. They armed weapons they could barely understand in the cargo holds massive. Machines hummed with energy that could crack planets like eggs. Alina spent the time alone in her quarters. She looked at pictures of her family back on Earth. Her mother in her garden, her sisters, children playing in the yard, her father's grave covered in flowers. She thought about what she was about to do, about what it would mean. She had joined the Navy to explore the stars, to find new life and new worlds, to bring peace and knowledge to the galaxy. Now she was going to threaten to burn a civilization to the ground. The irony was not lost on her, but then she thought about the sorry. She thought about all those species that had begged for mercy and received none. She thought about what would happen to Earth, to her mother and her sister and those children playing in the yard if humanity surrendered. She made her choice. When the deadline came, Archon Kathra appeared on the screen once more. His 4 eyes were bright with satisfaction. He had done this 1,000 times. He knew exactly how it would go. The humans would cry and beg and plead, then they would surrender, then they would serve. Your time is up, he said. Give me your answer. Alina stood at the center of her bridge. Her crew stood with her. They were not crying, they were not begging, they were standing straight, with their heads held high. We have a response for you, Archon, Alina said. Her voice was calm and cold. 7 words. Listen carefully, because I will only say them once. Kathra leaned forward, amused. Speak, little human. Alina looked directly into his 4 eyes. We decline and we remember the sorry. The Archon froze. His wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. For the first time in 300 years, something that looked like fear crossed his face. What did you say? You heard me's theory, the Vaughn, the Kethmari. 800 species, trillions of lives. You thought no one remembered them. You thought their names were lost forever. Alina smiled, and it was not a human smile. It was the smile of something ancient and terrible and patient. We remember all of them. And now, Archon, you are going to pay. Outside the adamantine, space itself seemed to hold its breath. Something was coming. Something was about to change. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had crushed every enemy, conquered every threat, destroyed every challenge. They had never met humans before. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. Archon Kathra's shock lasted only a moment. Then Ray filled his face like fire filling a furnace. His 4 eyes burned red. His thin hands gripped the arms of his throne until his claws drew blood from his own flesh. You dare, he hissed. You dare speak those names to me. You dare threaten the Dominion. He stood up, towering in his throne room like an angry god. I was going to be merciful. I was going to let your species serve. Now, I will burn your little ship and everyone inside it. Then I will find your home world. I will turn it to glass. I will make your species a memory, just like the Visari, just like all the others. He cut the connection and turned to his fleet commander. Destroy them. All weapons, maximum power, leave nothing but atoms. The order went out. Across the Dominion fleet, 67 warships turned their weapons toward the adamantine. Each ship carried enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Together they could burn a planet down to its core against a single human vessel. It was more than overkill. It was total destruction. Fire, the fleet commander said. Space lit up like a star being born, beams of energy, missiles, plasma bursts, kinetic rounds, everything the Dominion had. They threw at the human ship. Barrage was so intense that sensors across half the sector picked up the energy release. Any normal ship would have been vaporized in the first millisecond. The Adamantine was not a normal ship. On the bridge, Captain Vasquez watched the wall of death rushing toward them. Her crew was silent. Some had closed their eyes, some were holding hands. Lieutenant Chin was praying again. Temporal shift in 3 seconds. The ship's computer announced 2-1 engaging. The world twisted for a heartbeat. Everything felt wrong, like reality itself had hiccuped. Then the feeling passed and Elena opened her eyes. The attack had missed. Every single shot, every beam, every missile, they had all passed through empty space. The Adamantine floated untouched, exactly where it had been before. What happened? Torres asked. Elena smiled. We moved just a little bit, about half a second into the future. Their weapons hit where we were, not where we are. By the time the attack arrived, we had already left. The crew stared at her in disbelief. Time travel. Humanity had built a ship that could move through time. It was impossible. It was insane. It was beautiful. On the Dominion flagship, Archon Cathra was screaming. His sensors showed the human ship still floating there, completely undamaged. His tactical officers were running calculations that made no sense. His weapons had hit nothing. The humans should be dead. They were not dead. Fire again, he roared. Keep firing until they are dust. The fleet fired again and again and again. Each time the human ship simply was not there. When the weapons arrived, it was like trying to swat a fly that could see the future. Theory poured enough energy into space to light a sun for 1,000 years. They hit nothing but empty vacuum. Then the Adamantine fired back. It was a single shot, one small projectile, no bigger than a human fist. It left the ship's main cannon at almost the speed of light. The Dominion sensors barely registered it before it punched through the flagship like a needle through paper. The projectile did not explode. It did not need to. At that speed, the impact alone tore a hole through 17 decks. Air and bodies and debris sprayed into space. Emergency systems screamed. Damage reports flooded in. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what the projectile left behind. Embedded in the wreckage was a small device. It activated the moment it stopped moving. Across every Dominion frequency, across every communication channel in the Empire, a signal began to broadcast. It carried 2 pieces of information. The first was a set of coordinates, the location of the Velari home world. The second was a countdown, 72 hours. Archon Cathra stared at the data in horror. What is this? What have they done? His answer came from across the galaxy. 11 more human ships decloaked. Simultaneously, they appeared near 11 Dominion core systems, military headquarters, industrial centers, population hubs. Each ship was identical to the Adamantine. Each carried the same impossible weapons. Each broadcast the same message. Attention Velari Dominion, this is Admiral James Ayanquo of the United Earth Strategic Command. Your fleet has attacked a human vessel. Without provocation, this is an act of war. We respond in kind, on screens, across the Empire, in throne rooms and command centers and civilian homes. The Admiral's face appeared. He was calm, he was cold, he was utterly without fear. We have placed 12 vessels at strategic positions throughout your territory. Each vessel carries weapons capable of causing stellar collapse. In simple terms, we can make your suns explode. We can turn your worlds into ash. We can erase your species from the universe, just as you have erased so many others. He let that sink in. Across the Dominion, billions have watched in stunned silence. This is not a bluff. This is not a negotiation. This is a demonstration. You wanted to see what humanity is capable of. Now you know. We have spent 2 centuries preparing for you. We know everything about your empire. We know your strengths, your weaknesses, your secrets. We know the names of every species you have murdered. We remember them all, and we have come to collect the debt you owe. The Admiral leaned forward, his dark eyes burning with cold fire. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. If you do not surrender, we will begin systematic destruction of your colony worlds. 1. Every hour. We will not stop until your empire is nothing but memory and ash. He paused. You thought humanity would kneel. You were wrong. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. We do not forgive. And we never ever forget. Transmission ended. Across the galaxy, the Velari Dominion stood frozen. For 10,000 years, they had been the hunters. They had been the conquerors. They had been the ones who decided who lived and who died. Now they were prey. On the bridge of the adamantine, Captain Vasquez watched the chaos spreading through the enemy fleet. Ships were breaking formation. Communications were going crazy. The perfect military machine was falling apart before her eyes. They are scared, Tor said quietly. They have never been scared before. Elena nodded. No, they have never met anything they could not crush. They do not know how to handle this. They do not know how to fight someone who is willing to go as far as they are. She paused. Further, actually, we are willing to go further than they ever dreamed. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 11 other human captains were standing on their bridges, watching the same chaos unfold. Somewhere out there, billions of Velari were realizing that their empire might not survive the week. And somewhere out there, the ghosts of 800 dead civilizations were watching, waiting. Finally, after all these centuries, someone had come to speak for them. Someone had come to make things right. Elena closed her eyes and made a silent promise to those ghosts. This is for you, all of you. We remember and we will make them pay. The countdown continued. 71 hours remained. The Velari High Council met in the ancient chamber where their ancestors had planned the conquest of the galaxy. For 10,000 years, this room had seen only victory, only triumph, only the satisfaction of predators who had never known defeat. Now it was filled with fear. 12 members sat around the great table. They were the rulers of an empire that spanned 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They commanded fleets that numbered in the millions. They controlled resources that could build worlds or destroy them. They had crushed 2,000 species beneath their heels, and they were terrified. This is impossible, said High Counselor VTH Khan. His voice was shaking. No species has ever threatened us like this. No species has ever had this kind of power. Where did these humans come from? A small yellow star at the edge of the Orion arm, another counselor replied. We passed them by centuries ago. They were Primitive stone tools and wooden ships they should not have achieved. Space flight for another 1,000 years. Well, they did, Vthun snapped, and now they have weapons that can make stars explode. How is this possible? How did we miss this? No one had an answer. The humans had hidden themselves well. They had pretended to be harmless explorers, while secretly building an arsenal that could end civilizations. They had watched and waited and prepared, and now, when the Dominion finally came for them, they were ready. Archon Kathra stood at the far end of the room. His flagship was damaged but still functional. His fleet was in chaos but still dangerous. He had spent the last 6 hours trying to find a way out of this nightmare. He had found nothing. We should call their bluff, he said. They are soft creatures. They speak of morals and ethics and the value of life. They do not have the stomach for true warfare. They will not actually destroy our worlds. You are certain of this? Vthun asked. I have studied thousands of species. The soft ones always break. They threaten, they posture, but when it comes time to actually cause harm, they hesitate. We simply need to wait them out. The council discussed this for hours. Some agreed with the Archon, some wanted to negotiate, some wanted to launch a full attack on the human vessels, hopping to destroy them before the countdown ended. In the end, they decided to test the humans. They would not surrender. They would not attack. They would simply wait and see if the humans actually had the will to do what they threatened. The countdown reached 0. Admiral Anquo appeared on screens across the Empire once more. Your time has expired. You have not surrendered. This is unfortunate. His face showed no emotion. His voice was flat and cold. As promised, we will now begin systematic destruction of your colony worlds. This is not revenge. This is not anger. This is simply consequence. You made a choice. Now you will live with the results. On the colony world of Vthora, 17 billion Velari looked up at their sky. It was a beautiful day. Children were playing in the streets. Workers were heading to their jobs. Life was continuing as it always had, as it always would. Then the sky turned white. The human weapon did not make a sound. There was no explosion, no shockwave, no warning. One moment VTH Korra was a thriving world full of life and hope and dreams. The next moment it was a ball of molten rock floating in space. 17 billion people simply ceased to exist. Their cities, their homes, their families, their history, all of it was gone in an instant that lasted forever. Across the Dominion, billions watched in horror. They had done this to other species many times. They had burned worlds and killed billions without a second thought, but it had never happened to them. They had never imagined it could happen to them. Now they knew better. Admiral Anquo appeared again. Vthora is gone. You have 59 minutes until the next world is destroyed, then 59 more minutes until the next. This will continue until you surrender, or until there is no one left to surrender. He paused. We told you we remembered the Thesari. We told you we remembered all of them. Did you think we were just talking? Did you think we would show mercy when you have never shown mercy to anyone? He leaned closer to the camera. His dark eyes were empty of everything except cold purpose. You taught the galaxy that mercy is weakness. You showed 2,000 species that kindness means nothing, that compassion is a lie, that only power matters. Congratulations. We learned everything. You had to teach, and now we are going to give that lesson back to you with interest until you understand what it means to be on the other side. The High Council erupted into chaos. Counselors were screaming at each other. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Some still wanted to fight. Some were praying to gods they had not believed in for centuries. Vithan slammed his fist on the table. Enough, we cannot fight this, we cannot hide from this, we cannot wish it away. The humans have beaten us, the only question now is how many more of our people will die before we accept that truth. You want us to surrender, Keitha snarled, to crawl before these insects, to beg for mercy from creatures that should be our slaves. I want us to survive, VTH Khan shouted back. Look at what they did to Vithora. 17 billion of our people dead in an instant, and they have 11 more ships. They can do this too. Every world we have, they can wipe us out completely. Is your pride worth the extinction of our entire species? The Archon fell silent. He had no answer. The minutes ticked by. Another world was destroyed, then another. Each time billions died. Each time the humans offered the same choice, surrender or burn. The Dominion had never faced an enemy like this, an enemy that did not negotiate, did not hesitate, did not show any hint of weakness or doubt. After the Third World was destroyed, the High Council voted. It was not unanimous. Archon Kathra still wanted to fight, but he was overruled. The order went out across the Empire. All military forces were to stand down. All weapons were to be deactivated. All ships were to return to their home ports. The Velari Dominion was surrendering. For the first time in 10,000 years, they were admitting defeat. Admiral Anqua received the message on the bridge of his flagship, the Ewing Prometheus. He read it twice, then turned to his crew. They have surrendered. All forces stand down. No more worlds will be destroyed. There was no celebration, no cheering, no joy. The crews simply nodded and returned to their duties. They had done terrible things over the past day. Necessary things perhaps, but still terrible. They would carry the weight of those deaths for the rest of their lives. Akinquo walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were the ruins of 3 Velari worlds. Billions of dead, billions more who would never be born. He had ordered those deaths. He had made that choice. He would not apologize for it. The Dominion had killed trillions across thousands of years. They had shown no mercy, felt no guilt, offered no regret. They had treated the galaxy like their personal hunting ground, and every other species like prey. Now they knew what it felt like to be prey. Now they understood what they had done to so many others. It was a harsh lesson, a brutal lesson, a lesson written in blood and fire and the ashes of worlds, but it was a lesson they would never forget. On the Adamantine, Captain Vasquez heard the news. She closed her eyes and let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like years. It was over. The war that had not quite been a war was finished. The Dominion had surrendered. Humanity had won. But even as she felt relief, she also felt something else. Something heavy and dark that settled in her chest like a stone. They had won. But at what cost? What had they become? She did not know the answer. She was not sure she wanted to know. The fall of the Velari Dominion took 72 hours. The aftermath took 3 years. Across the galaxy, species that had lived in chains for centuries suddenly found their Masters gone, the servitor races. Billions of beings who had known nothing. But slavery looked up and saw empty. Thrones, some did not know what to do. With their freedom, they had been servants for so long that they had forgotten how to be anything else, but others remembered, others had kept their anger burning through generations of oppression. When the Dominion military stood down, these species rose up. Weapons that humanity had been secretly smuggling to resistance groups for decades suddenly appeared in the hands of those who had been waiting for this moment. The rebellions were not pretty. Centuries of hate exploded in a wave of violence that swept across former Dominion space. Human peacekeeping forces tried to protect innocent Velari civilians, but they could not be. Everywhere old wounds were opened. Debts were paid in blood. Eventually, the fires burned themselves out. Anger faded into exhaustion, and the work of building something new began. Humanity did not try to rule the former Dominion territories. They had not come to conquer, they had come to free. The United Earth Council proposed a new organization, the Free Systems Compact. Every former servitor species was invited to join as equals. Every world would govern itself. No one would kneel to anyone ever again. It was not perfect. Nothing built by living beings ever is. There were disagreements, conflicts, old hatreds that needed generations to heal. But slowly, painfully, something new grew from the ashes of the old empire. Community of free peoples working together instead of fighting each other. And throughout it all, humanity stood watch. The 12 Prometheus-class vessels returned to their stations across the galaxy. They did not threaten, they did not demand, they simply existed. Silent reminder that somewhere out there someone was watching, someone remembered, someone would respond if any power tried to build another empire on the bones of the innocent. The trials of the Dominion leadership took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. Every major species sent representatives. The evidence was overwhelming. Records of genocide, orders for mass executions, plans for the extermination of entire civilizations. The Dominion had kept careful notes of their crimes. They had been proud of what they did. They never imagined anyone would hold them accountable. Archon Kathra stood before the tribunal, his 4 eyes still burning with defiance. When asked how he pleaded, he laughed. "You cannot judge me," he said. "I am Velari. We are the masters of this galaxy. We have ruled for 10,000 years. You are nothing but insects who got lucky. One day we will rise again, and we will." The human prosecutor cut him off. "You are not masters, you are criminals, and today you will answer for your crimes." The tribunal found Kithra and the rest of the Dominion leadership guilty on all counts. The sentence was not death. Humanity considered death too merciful for what they had done. Instead, they were exiled to a barren moon at the edge of the galaxy, a prison without walls, without guards, without hope of escape. The moon had no name. It was given one memorial because that was what it would be, a living memorial to the crimes of the Dominion. On memorial, the Velari leaders would live out their naturally long lives in isolation. They would have food, water, and shelter. They would have nothing else, no servants, no luxuries, no power, just endless years to think about what they had done, and they would be surrounded by reminders. Monuments were built across the moon's surface, one for every species. The Dominion had destroyed over 800 monuments, each carrying the names of those who had been lost. The prisoners would see them every day. They would walk among the ghosts of their victims until the day they died. 10 years passed, then 20, then 50. Captain Elena Vasquez, now Admiral Vasquez, stood before the great memorial. On Earth, it was a wall of names that stretched for kilometers. Every species the Dominion had destroyed was listed. Here, every civilization that had been erased, every voice that had been silenced. She was old now. Her hair was white. Her face was lined with years and memories. But her eyes were still sharp, still strong, still burning with the same fire that had faced down Arkankathra all those decades ago. A young officer approached her. He was new to the fleet, fresh from the academy, full of questions about the past. Admiral, he said, may I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret it? What we did to the Dominion, the worlds we destroyed? Elena was quiet for a long time. She looked at the names on the wall. So many names, so many people who would never laugh or love or dream again. Every day, she said finally, I see their faces in my dreams. 17 billion people on VTH Cora. More on the other worlds. I gave those orders. I made those choices. The weight of it never goes away. The young officer looked troubled. Then, how do you live with it? Elena pointed to the memorial wall. I look at this. I remember why we did it. The Dominion killed trillions over thousands of years. They would have killed billions more if we had not stopped them. They would have enslaved humanity. They would have destroyed Earth. They would have erased everything we are and everything we could become. She turned to face the young man directly. I do not regret stopping them. I regret that stopping them required such terrible choices. I wish there had been another way, but there was not. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to become something that frightens you. Sometimes the price of peace is a piece of your soul. She looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there beyond the blue, the Prometheus-class vessels kept their eternal watch, guardians of a galaxy that had learned finally that some prices are too high to pay. We did not want this power, she said. We did not want to be the ones who decided who lives and who dies, but the universe does not care what we want. It only cares what we do. And when the choice came, we did what we had to do. We protected those who could not protect themselves. We spoke for those who could no longer speak. We remembered those who had been forgotten. She placed her hand on the memorial wall. The stone was cold beneath her fingers. Never again, she whispered. That is our promise. Never again will an empire rise to prey upon the innocent. Never again will voices be silenced without consequence. Never again will anyone believe that might makes right and cruelty is strength. She looked at the young officer with something like hope in her old eyes. That is our legacy, not the weapons, not the power, not the terrible things we did. Our legacy is this: we made the galaxy safe for life. We gave 1,000 species the chance to grow and dream and become whatever they want to become. We proved that there is something stronger than empires and armies and fear. What is that, Admiral? Elena smiled. It was a tired smile, a sad smile, but it was real. Memory, justice, and the stubborn refusal to let evil win. She took a deep breath. Humanity does not conquer. Humanity does not enslave, but humanity never forgets, and humanity never stops protecting those who need protection. She walked away from the memorial, leaving the young officer to stare at the names carved into stone: 800. Civilization, trillions of lives, and one species that had refused to let them be forgotten. In the stars above, the silent guardians kept their watch.